I was 23 years old when I went to a Halloween party at my old best friend Ethan's house. He died of a heroin overdose in August 2015, but before his death, he was known for throwing the biggest Halloween parties every year. His parents always flew to Chicago for their own annual event, leaving the house to him. Ethan was obsessed with Halloween. His entire place was transformed into a haunted maze, complete with fake cobwebs, blood-stained props, and walls he built from cardboard and covered with spooky wallpaper. Everyone knew he spent too much money on those decorations, but no one ever complained. His parties were legendary. I'll skip over the drugs, beer, and other chaos that went down that night and get straight to where things took a dark turn. Ethan and a few of us, Marco, Jay, Chris, and I, were upstairs in his room passing around a bong when we suddenly heard two loud bangs from downstairs. Ethan jumped up, startled but panicked, and rushed to open the door. From down below, we could hear screaming, both guys and girls, the kind of screaming you don't mistake for a prank. It sounded like pure terror. We shouted for Ethan to get back in the room and lock the door. Even in our intoxicated state, we knew something was terribly wrong. Ethan slipped back in, locked the door quietly, and his face said it all. He looked like he'd just seen someone get murdered. "What did you see?" I asked. He didn't answer, just told us to hide. He turned off the lights and ducked into the closet with Jay. I crawled under the bed with Chris, and Marco squeezed himself into a big storage box. Moments later, the blasting music downstairs stopped, followed by a man shouting for everyone to shut up. Then a girl screamed, another gunshot, and silence. We could hear at least 3 different male voices. Boots pounded up the stairs and stopped right outside the bedroom door. The doorknob rattled, then the sound of someone slamming their shoulder into it. After a few tries, there were 3 gunshots, and the door swung open. Through the hanging sheet under the bed, I saw black boots and torn jeans. The man walked straight to the closet and yanked the door open. Ethan started begging, offering money, anything for them to leave. The intruder forced him to go downstairs. The rest of us stayed hidden. For about 20 minutes, we could hear muffled voices downstairs. Ethan's among them. And then finally, the front door slammed. Ethan came running back up, pale and shaking, saying they were gone. When I finally dared to go downstairs, I froze. 2 of our friends, Hannah and Rob, were lying motionless on the floor, blood pooling around their heads. I'll spare you the details of the police investigation, but it was chaos. The house reeked of weed, but the cops didn't care about that. They were after the men who'd just murdered 2 college kids. Ethan later told us there were 4 intruders, all wearing vendetta masks, fedoras, and gloves. They demanded $100,000 in cash, and when he couldn't give it, they forced everyone to throw their wallets into a sack. Anyone who resisted was shot. After that night, Ethan was never the same. He dropped out of school, started drinking constantly, and eventually turned to meth and heroin. I saw him once more before he died. He told me, tears streaming down his face and a pipe in his hand, that he lived in constant guilt, convinced the deaths were his fault. Ethan died of an overdose in August 2015, less than a year after that Halloween night that none of us will ever forget. It was Halloween night, 2020, and I had just tucked my 8-year-old daughter Emily into bed after a few hours of trick-or-treating. We'd had a quiet evening, pizza, a movie, and way too much candy. Around 10:30 p.m., I was half asleep when Emily came into my room clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Daddy," she whispered, "someone's in my closet." I smiled, still half dreaming. "There's no one in there, sweetheart. Probably just your costume shifting around. Go back to bed." She frowned but obeyed. I told myself I'd check on her in a bit, just in case. 5 minutes later, she was back, shaking. "I heard them moving," she said. "Something fell over." This time, the tone in her voice made my heart skip. I grabbed my phone as a flashlight and walked her to her room. "All right," I said, trying to sound calm. "Let's prove there's no one hiding." I flipped on the light, put my hand on the closet door, and half joking, called out, "Anybody in there?" Thud. Something shifted inside the closet. "Emily, go to the neighbors," I said quietly but firmly. "Tell them to call the police." She ran. I yanked the closet door open and froze. Sitting on Emily's toy chest was Ryan, the 15-year-old boy from next door, my neighbor's son. "What the hell are you doing in my daughter's room?" I shouted. I grabbed him by the collar and dragged him across the yard to his parents' house. Emily was already there, crying on their porch as his dad, Tom, opened the door. I shoved Ryan inside. "Your kid was in my daughter's closet," I snapped. "You'd better deal with him before I do." Tom smacked Ryan across the face and told me to come in so the boy could explain himself. I didn't want to, but I needed answers. Apparently, while Emily and I were out trick-or-treating, Ryan and his friend Dylan had snuck in through a window and hidden in her closet. "Is Dylan still in my house?" I asked. Ryan nodded. I sprinted back across the lawn, heart pounding, and stormed into Emily's room. There he was, Dylan, older, rougher looking, holding a pair of Emily's underwear in his hands. I saw red. I grabbed him by the throat, slammed him to the floor, and slapped him across the face until he started crying. I forced him to leave, yelling after him that if he or Ryan ever came near my daughter again, I'd make sure they regretted it. I didn't call the police that night, mostly because Tom was a close friend and swore he'd handle it. But I've regretted that decision ever since. The next morning, when I went to close the closet door, I noticed a tiny drill hole in the wood. They'd been spying on her while she slept. Emily's 13 now, Ryan's away at college, and I haven't seen Dylan in years. But not a week goes by that I don't think about that night and how easily things could have gone so much worse. It was Halloween night, 2021, and my friends and I, Aaron, Lucas, Megan, and I, were all 21 years old. We'd been looking for something more thrilling than house parties or bar crawls, so we decided to try a haunted attraction that had just opened a few towns over. It was called the Basement of Fear, a massive haunted house experience where groups had to navigate a maze, find a key, and unlock the exit to escape. It was the final weekend of the season, and everyone said it was the scariest one around. When we stepped inside, the first room looked like a set from an old horror movie. Dusty antique furniture, fake cobwebs, and a cracked coffin right in the center of the floor. Every few minutes, actors would jump out of hidden doors in disturbingly real costumes. We screamed. We laughed. It was exactly what we came for. It took us forever to find the door to the basement. When we finally did, a cold draft blew up the stairs. The place below was pitch black, with no lights at all. Phones weren't allowed, so we couldn't use our flashlights. Still, we had to go down. Step by step, the old wooden staircase groaned beneath our feet. We could hear our own laughter echoing off the concrete walls, trying to hide how tense we really were. Then I bumped into someone in the dark. "Lucas?" I whispered. No answer. A hand landed on my shoulder. I screamed and bolted back up the stairs, laughing in panic. But the way the fingers gripped me, it didn't feel like a friendly touch. Down in that darkness, we eventually stumbled upon a rusty desk. Sitting on it was an old iron key, the kind the attraction had told us to find. We ran upstairs yelling that we'd won and found the exit door, which creaked open into the night air. There was a box outside labeled, "Drop keys here, thank you." We tossed the key in, took a few victory selfies, and started heading back toward Aaron's car in the lot across the street. That's when the exit door opened again. A tall figure stepped out, dressed head to toe in black, wearing a bloody pig mask that glistened in the dim orange lights. He didn't speak, just stood there for a moment, then began walking in our direction. At first we laughed, assuming it was part of the act, but as we got farther from the attraction, he kept following. Lucas turned and shouted, "We don't have the key!" We dropped it off. No response, just slow, steady footsteps. We decided to test him. We stopped walking. So did he. We started walking again. He did too. The laughter died quickly. By the time we were 5 blocks away, we weren't sure if we should run or confront him. Aaron's house wasn't far, and both of his parents were home, so we headed there, cutting through backyards and side streets. We slipped through the gate into Aaron's backyard, but behind us the gate creaked open again. The man in the pig mask stepped through, this time moving faster. Aaron yanked the back door open and shouted for his dad. His father, Mr. Bennett, appeared in the doorway, holding his pistol. "Stop right there!" he barked. The masked man froze, raised his hands, and said in a shaky voice, "Please don't shoot. I'm only 27. Mr. Bennett shouted for him to get off the property and never come back, promising that next time he wouldn't hesitate to pull the trigger. The man backed away, turned, and vanished into the dark. The next day, Aaron called the haunted house to report what happened. The manager swore up and down that no one working there wore a pig mask and that all employees were accounted for at closing time. To this day, I don't know if he was some obsessed local, a thrill seeker gone too far, or something else entirely. But I'll never forget the sound of those footsteps following us down the empty street. Slow, patient, and far too real. It was Halloween night, 2017, and my family had just moved into a large new house in Oak Ridge, Ontario, a quiet suburb surrounded by woods. The house had 6 bedrooms, creaky stairs, and that faint old wood smell that never quite goes away. We'd only been there a few days, still surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. My parents wanted everyone to keep working, even though it was already 11:30 p.m. I was exhausted but helped finish up chores before heading upstairs to my new room. As I was getting ready for bed, I thought I heard footsteps in the hallway. "Liam," I called, thinking it was my brother. No answer. I stepped into the hall, empty. The lights flickered slightly, and a chill ran down my arms. I went downstairs to the basement where my parents and siblings were still sorting boxes. "Were any of you just upstairs?" I asked. They all looked at me. "No," my dad said. I tried to shrug it off as house noises, but when I got back to my room, the temperature had dropped so much that I had to grab a sweater. Around 12:30 a.m., I woke to a loud banging noise, rhythmic, heavy, coming from my parents' bedroom down the hall. It kept going, louder each time. I figured one of my sisters might be up, so I whispered through the darkness, "Who's there?" No response. The banging stopped. Then the hallway went completely silent. I lay back down, heart pounding, trying to convince myself it was plumbing or the heating system. But just as I started to drift off again, my bedroom door creaked open, slow, drawn out, as if someone was easing it open on purpose. "Who's there?" I whispered again. No one answered. Soft footsteps padded across the floor toward my bed. I could barely breathe. I turned my head and froze. A figure stood beside my bed. It was huge, easily 7 feet tall, its face swallowed by darkness. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. Then in a deep, guttural voice, it said one word, "Boo!" That broke me. I screamed until my parents burst through the door, flipping on the lights. The figure was gone. I told them everything. The banging, the footsteps, the voice. My siblings crowded the doorway, half asleep and staring at me like I'd lost it. My parents swore they hadn't heard a thing, but I know what I saw. You don't imagine something that clear, that close. Even years later, I still remember that voice and the way the air felt, cold and thick, like the house itself was holding its breath. I'll never forget that night, not ever. It happened on Halloween night, 2009. I was 11 years old, trick-or-treating with my best friend Chloe in our small town of Riverside Hills. We'd been going door to door for hours and had bags full of candy. As we crossed a narrow wooden bridge over Clearwater Creek, headlights suddenly lit us up. A black Jeep rolled to a stop at the far end of the bridge, blocking the path. We froze. The passenger window slid down, and a man with a raspy smoker's voice called out, "Hey girls, can you come here a second? I need directions." "Sorry," Chloe yelled back, and we turned around fast, hurrying back the way we came. The Jeep revved its engine, reversed off the bridge, and disappeared down the road. We thought that was the end of it, until another vehicle, an old tan SUV, came screeching around the corner and stopped right in front of us. There were 3 men inside, one in the driver's seat, another up front, and an older guy with curly gray hair in the back. He leaned forward, smiling through the open window. "Get in, girls," he said. "We've got bags of candy for you." Chloe grabbed my hand, whispering, "Run." We bolted. The Jeep came back around the block and started tailing us slowly, its headlights bouncing off the pavement. When we tried cutting through yards, it followed parallel to us on the street. As we got close to my house, both vehicles sped up. The Jeep screeched to a halt ahead of us, and 2 doors flew open. The men got out and started running toward us. We dropped our candy and sprinted faster than I ever knew I could. I slammed my fists against our front door until my mom opened it. She saw the Jeep turning around at the end of the street, slammed the door, locked it, and called the police. That night, my dad stayed by the window with a baseball bat while my mom gave the police descriptions of the vehicles and the men. About an hour later, flashing red and blue lights filled the street. Officers had pulled over a black Jeep and an SUV a few blocks away, and there were 3 men in custody, matching our description exactly. The police confirmed it was them. They'd been cruising neighborhoods all night, trying to lure kids with candy. Chloe and I were shaking, but when the officers led the men away in handcuffs, we stood by the door and shouted after them. What started as the scariest night of my life ended with relief and the realization that we'd escaped something far worse than we could have imagined.